Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Saturday. It's Daryl here. It's 5 a.m. bright and early here in Connecticut on the East Coast. It just occurred to me I'm barely going to be able to scratch the surface on this. Okay, we've had racism and discrimination and all that throughout history, bigotry and all that. It just doesn't appear, but it's obvious that just within the last 5 years that nationalism, supremacy, a reverence for 1940s Germany has been spreading not just in this country but across the world. And one thing that comes to mind is I've heard people talk about how Donald Trump isn't the problem. He's a symptom of the problem. And the phrase that those that don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. These are things that stick in my mind when I hear about the stuff, some of the stuff that just popped up in the last week. Take, for instance, Tucker Carlson has been railing on this for the last week now, talking about the Great Replacement theory. He feels that his vote means less now as a Caucasian man, that his political equity, his political power is being drained from him somehow. And then this group of politicians, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Louis Gohmert, and Matt Gaetz, they formed something called the America First Caucus. Now this is something, you guys know my background. This I found this particularly ironic. Makes me angry. Let me talk about this. The America First Caucus, like I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Louis Gohmert, Matt Gaetz. They formed this America First Caucus. This is like, we all knew that Donald Trump would be defeated sooner or later. Hopefully, he was finally defeated. But we almost see, I hate to say this, but it's like a passing of the torch to this Trump point two, this second generation of radical right nationalistic, I gotta watch how I phrase this, these Trump supporters now going on with this and taking it to even higher levels of racism. All right, let me talk about the document that this group of politicians for the America First Caucus, this is what it states. Let's see. This is what it states. History has shown that societal trust and political unity are threatened when foreign citizens are imported en masse into a country, particularly without institutional support for assimilation and an expansive welfare state to bail them out should they fail to contribute positively to the country. That's interesting. The document also goes on to demand that any new American infrastructure, engineering, and aesthetic value, that it befits the progeny of European architecture. That one, let me start at the beginning here. I can't help but to think, as somebody that's got I'm part Native American, the Wabanaki Confederacy, and I am from the Mi'kmaq Nation, the Mi'kmaq tribe, and I'm part French Canadian. And I find it kind of ironic because it almost sounds like they're talking about what the Europeans came to North America. It talks about, let's see, when foreign citizens were imported en masse into a country, particularly without institutional support. Yeah, sounds like the Europeans coming here and colonizing. And then it goes on to say, it's an assimilation in an expansive welfare state to bail them out should they fail to contribute positively to the country. Now, that reminds me, we've all heard the story about Thanksgiving. And I remember this one story in particular that the people that came over, the Europeans that came over, were having a hard time growing, and that the Native Americans showed them that by taking fish and digging a hole and putting the fish in with the corn to act as fertilizer that would help grow the corn. And the Native Americans showed them how to do this, how to grow a lot of crops. And now, to be honest with you guys, I'm not sure, I learned that in school, and that's not something I learned from my Native American background, so I don't know how true that is, but it's kind of coincidental that what this group of politicians, obviously, they're mainly talking about the refugees coming from the southern border, from South America, Central America. And they're obviously talking about them. Now, the architecture part, I don't even get. I'm not even sure what the progeny that the architectural engineering, it reflects the aesthetic value that befits the progeny of European architecture. It sounds like, we already have a lot of architecture from South America and Central America are already here. We see it in Florida and Texas and all the southern states. I'm not sure what exactly is getting their panties all in a bunch here, what they're worried about. But I just have to kind of laugh. It almost sounds like they want castles. I picture, the castles from Germany, that something that befits the progeny of European architecture. They don't want any dirty Mexican buildings in America. I don't know what they're saying here. Like I said, I can't. I gotta laugh when I look at this because, like I said, it just reminds me so much of the Europeans. They came here that had a hard time growing crops, and if it weren't for the Native Americans helping them or giving them welfare, they would have never survived here. And how eventually, then it talks about support for assimilation, and when the Europeans came here, they ended up assimilating the Native Americans, trying to assimilate them into their culture. So the Europeans came here, took over they were provided welfare by the Native Americans. They then ended up assimilating or attempting to assimilate or destroy or enslave the Native Americans. And now they're demanding that anybody else come into the country assimilate into them and only build architecture and engineering that befits the progeny of European architecture. Wow. I don't even know what to say about all this. I find it ironic that the descendants of people that came here and were actually the refugees and illegal immigrants, that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar and Louis Gohmert and Matt Gaetz, all of them came to a country that wasn't theirs. Their ancestors came here and started building with architecture that didn't befit Native America. It's all rather ironic, and it would almost be humorous if it weren't so disgusting. All right, I'll be back later. This is just my first impression of this. I had to talk about this. I'm going to talk more about Tucker Carlson and his great replacement theory and this America's First Caucus. I'll be talking more about that. You guys have a good Saturday.